Hey everyone. Today we need to sit down and really unpack what's happening with NIO, because there's a lot of noise, a lot of excitement, and a lot of confusion swirling around at the same time. The stock price is moving in ways that don't match what's happening on the ground in China, and suddenly, people inside the country are waking up to something many long-term followers already suspected. NIO might be far more advanced and far more safety-focused than the general public ever understood. And the surprising part is that this shift in perception didn't come from a marketing campaign, a commercial, or some influencer review. It came from one single revelation from NIO's own CEO that has unexpectedly gone viral and completely changed how people view the company's engineering. So in this video, we're going to break all of that down in detail. We'll explore why Chinese consumers are suddenly shocked, why many are excited, and why others feel frustrated that such important information was never communicated earlier. After that, we'll shift gears and talk about what's happening with NIO's stock price and whether the current pullback is something to worry about or just another temporary reaction before earnings. There's a lot to get through, and by the end, you'll have the complete picture of why sentiment around NIO is evolving the way it is right now. Let's dive in. This is not financial advice. Please do your own research. From the very beginning, NIO positioned itself as a brand that puts safety and engineering above everything else, even when that decision isn't the easiest or cheapest one to make. But most regular consumers didn't fully understand the extent of that commitment until very recently, because an important part of NIO's technology was never really explained to the public. It was simply built into the cars quietly, doing its job silently, without being used as a highlight in marketing. And this hidden advantage finally came to light when the CEO mentioned something that didn't seem like a big deal at first, but ended up sparking a massive reaction online. He pointed out that Firefly Cars, the sub-brand that NIO will launch for the overseas mass market, would not be using CATL's swap system. And people were confused at first because CATL is a powerhouse in battery technology, and NIO already collaborates with them in many ways. But then he explained the reason. CATL's swap batteries are air-cooled, while NIO's entire battery system is liquid-cooled. And not only are NIO's batteries liquid-cooled, but the cooling system is actively regulated both by the vehicle itself and by the swap station. That means the coolant isn't trapped inside the battery pack. It can be cycled, removed, added, and adjusted as needed. This shocked people. Many had no idea that NIO's system worked this way. They knew the batteries were liquid-cooled, but they assumed the coolant was sealed inside the pack like most EVs. But in NIO's case, the coolant actually flows and can be controlled dynamically. When the car is in use, the system constantly balances temperature to protect the battery. When the car is swapped at a station, the station itself can manage the coolant, adding more if needed, removing excess liquid, or relieving pressure inside the system. And when consumers started digesting that information, the reaction was a strange mix of amazement, anger, and relief. Amazement because they never imagined such a system existed at all. Relief because it meant NIO's batteries were even safer than they thought. And anger because they couldn't understand why NIO never made this a major selling point years ago. This is the type of thing other companies would brag about non-stop. Yet NIO simply designed it quietly and never talked about it publicly. This also came at a moment when another automaker, Li Auto, faced a fire incident that many believe was caused by their cooling system design. Their coolant sits inside the battery pack like still water. It doesn't move or release pressure freely. When temperatures rise, the trapped coolant expands with nowhere to go. When the battery cools down, contraction creates the same issue. Over time, this constant expansion and contraction cycle increases risk. And when the incident happened, many observers immediately drew comparisons between the two systems. That's why people online became emotional about the discovery. They were thinking, wait a second, NIO solved this years ago, built the safer system, engineered a smart design that removes these risks, but didn't bother to tell anyone. Meanwhile, other brands with inferior systems are marketing aggressively, and consumers end up assuming those brands are doing just as much engineering work. This cultural frustration even became a trending phrase online. People used a Chinese expression that basically means hiding the meat under the rice. When you look at the bowl, all you see is the surface level, the rice. You can't see the meat underneath, even though it's there and it's the most valuable part. That's what users are now saying about NIO. The company keeps giving people more value than they realize, but they hide it so well that nobody knows what they're really getting. Meanwhile, other manufacturers put their meat right on top for everyone to see, even when it's small or unimpressive. And this is why many customers suddenly feel conflicted. They appreciate the engineering, they love the safety focus, and they admire the philosophy. But they're also annoyed, because keeping these strengths hidden means the broader market doesn't understand NIO's advantages. That leads consumers to buy other brands, only to have issues with heat, cooling, or fires. People see that and think, if NIO had simply advertised this massive safety advantage earlier, some of those customers might have made different purchasing decisions. The surprising part is that the general public is only now discovering how advanced NIO's entire battery swap and cooling system actually is. Experts who've researched the technology for years already knew the basics, but the level of liquid cool regulation, the ability to adjust coolant at the swap station, and the built-in safety philosophy behind it were details most consumers never heard about. Now the information is spreading rapidly online, and the reaction is overwhelmingly positive. Many are saying they didn't realize NIO's system was this far ahead, and now they're reevaluating the brand. But this revelation also leads to another important point that many people misunderstood earlier. When we talk about the future of battery swapping, there won't be a single universal standard. NIO and CATL are diverging in two different directions. NIO is sticking to the premium liquid-cooled path, which is safer, more advanced, but takes a bit more time to swap. Meanwhile, CATL is going for the low-cost, fast-swap air-cooled system suitable for cheaper mass-market cars. This became even more obvious when JD.com, the giant e-commerce company often compared to Amazon, launched its own electric car in collaboration with JSE. The vehicle is extremely affordable, and because it uses CATL's system, it can complete a battery swap in around 99 seconds. That makes it attractive to people who prioritize low cost and fast convenience. And when consumers saw that, they realized the gap between the two ecosystems. NIO's system is superior, but it's designed for higher-end vehicles. CATL's system is inferior in cooling and performance, but much cheaper and extremely fast. So when you put these pieces together, it becomes clear that a universal swapping standard will never realistically happen. NIO swap stations will remain compatible only with liquid-cooled packs. CATL swap stations will focus on cheaper air-cooled packs, and both ecosystems will exist in parallel because they serve different segments of the market. That's not a problem, it's simply the direction the industry is taking. Now let's shift gears and talk about the stock, because this topic is only one part of the recent discussion. On the market side, NIO's stock has been pulling back despite strong weekly delivery numbers in China. Normally, record weekly deliveries would lift investor sentiment, but instead the stock isn't reacting the way many expected. And one reason could be that the market is preparing for NIO's upcoming earnings report. There's speculation that some investors may be taking profits early or preparing for potentially weak Q3 results. The company made it very clear earlier that Q3 would be a quarter of heavy spending. They had two major launch events, the new ES8 unveiling and the Onvo L90 introduction. They also made supply chain and brand adjustments that likely increased expenses temporarily. And management even hinted that they front-loaded many of these costs specifically so that Q4 would be lighter. So it's reasonable to assume that some investors are nervous and want to de-risk before the earnings release. That could explain the short-term pressure on the stock. But the interesting part is that despite the selling, there isn't a clear sign of panic or deep concern. The current price movement looks more like caution than fear. Another point is that many of the positive factors might already be priced in. Strong deliveries, optimism around the Onvo L90, and positive ES8 reception might not be moving the stock because investors have already accounted for them. That leaves profitability as the next major catalyst. And this is where the conversation becomes very interesting. Most analysts doubt NIO can turn a profit in Q4. Even many NIO fans are skeptical. But at the same time, there's a growing belief that profitability is at least possible. The cost-cutting measures in Q3 were significant. The production ramp is strong. The momentum inside China is clearly visible. So if NIO surprises the market and hits profitability sooner than expected, Q4 earnings, which will be released around March, could become a major turning point in the company's history. If profitability is achieved, it disproves the entire NIO will run out of money narrative. It removes long-standing fear, and it signals that NIO is maturing into a stable, sustainable, and growing business. Until then, we're in a waiting period. Deliveries are rising. Consumer perception in China is improving. The technology advantage is becoming more widely understood. But the stock market wants proof in numbers. And that proof will come only when the earnings show that NIO can grow and profit at the same time. To wrap everything up, the sudden shift in public perception about NIO didn't come from marketing. It came from a revelation about battery safety and cooling technology that most people simply never knew. The discovery that NIO's liquid cooling system is dynamic, regulated, and safer than competitors shocked consumers. It reassured them. And it frustrated them because they couldn't understand why this wasn't made clear years earlier. At the same time, the battery swap landscape is splitting into two segments: NIO's high-end liquid-cooled approach and CATL's low-cost air-cooled system. This means there won't be a universal swap standard, and that's okay because both ecosystems serve different needs in the market. Finally, the stock price isn't reacting to strong deliveries because investors may be cautious ahead of earnings. Q3 may look expensive, but the setup for Q4 is strong, and if profitability arrives earlier than expected, the entire narrative around NIO will transform. For now, all eyes are on earnings, on the growing momentum in China, and on how the market reacts once the full picture becomes undeniable. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more stock predictions and market insights. Remember to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Happy investing, and see you in the next video.